Okay, welcome everybody to our final session of the day. Well done. Your stamina is obviously immense. You've made it this far. The end is in sight. It's a pleasure to welcome our final panel of the day. For those who haven't met me yet, I'm Matt Probert. I'm the director of NHCIR. In my day job, I'm a physics professor, long-time HPC user, coder, RSC advocate, and all that kind of stuff. But the main thing we're here for today is the panel, and so it's a pleasure to introduce them. So we've got Jeremy Cohen, Martin Turner, Lee, oh, is name wrong?
Convey.
Lee Convey, sorry, and Santiago
Molina.
I'll get there in the end, thank you. So Santiago stepped in very bravely at the last minute because our panellists had to leave. So thank you very much, Santiago, for stepping in. So obviously we've met a couple of the panel before, so we'll have a brief introduction. And Santiago and Jeremy, you have a chance to introduce them. Santiago, we'll start with you at the end.
Yes, so really nice to see you all. I'm Santiago Molina. I'm Senior Policy Manager at UKRI for Digital Research Infrastructure Program.
Lee?
Hi everyone again. It's Lee Convey, a Senior Portfolio Manager in EPSRC UKRI, looking after the capital infrastructure.
Martin?
Martin Turner from Manchester, but one of the reasons why I'm here is that about 10 years ago we were restructuring the whole of the University of Manchester IT side, and I took it wasn't really brave, it's just a stupid move, of basically trying to embed myself and integrate myself within the UKRI and STFC at that point. I remember spending weekly trips down to Harwell from here, which means 6 o'clock in the morning train and 10 o'clock in the morning train back. And then basically being in the DSP labs for another 3 or 4 years, just trying to get myself embedded in and understand the culture and understand the structure. And that sort of works. And then coming back now into Manchester, and at the same time trying to do the bids between the two, and I try to understand it. One quick message I'll say is these people on these other councils, they are weird and they work with the government and do things, but they are real people. And people, I think, forget that. And they have a totally different payroll structure. So it's all these things. And suddenly to be on the other side and actually having to line manage both sides or do little details is really useful. And then you sort of understanding. That's why I'm here.
Thank you. And Jeremy?
Thank you. So I'm Jeremy Cohen. I'm a research fellow in the Department of Computing at Imperial College London and also Director of Research Software Strategy at Imperial. I have a computer science background and I'm a former EPSRC Research Software Engineering Fellow. My current kind of main role is leading the Step Up Strategic Technical Platform project, which is one of EPSRC's recently funded, or funded last year, STP platforms. And as part of that, I'm doing a lot of work around supporting careers and skills for research technical professionals, so kind of growing the space and growing the understanding around how we develop roles and how we better support people in that community.
Thank you. So very relevant and very timely experience for what we're talking about today. So in this session, we're focusing on the funding landscape, and particularly with the focus on UKRI and the DRI profession. So I guess the opening question probably for Jeremy and Martin in the first case, what experiences have you had in the last year that defined your approach to UKRI and funding calls? Jeremy? You've obviously been very successful recently, so tell us about your experience and how did it work? So
obviously we've had some really good experiences and I guess some more challenging experiences, but I think that the takeaway for me has been that the DRI program I think is looking at a very wide range of areas that are hugely important to developing the space for supporting research. I think it's really nice to see that stuff that previously we tried to do through various other means has now come together under this program and is being very effectively supported through this program. So I think from a personal perspective, it's nice to see a lot of things that I've been trying to do for several years align under a structure that I think supports us all as a community and is giving us all the opportunity to have a go at both getting funding but also working with people who have got the funding to make a change to the community. And so, very positive experience from that perspective, and I think something that hopefully will continue. I know there's been several presentations by the DRI team showing the kind of plans going forward with this and how there is funding for various different activities under this space over the coming years. So I really look forward to seeing those opportunities going forward, and hopefully, you know, more people. We saw, I think before, the number of people who put their hands up to say that they've been involved in business cases and proposals was some percentage of the room, but not everybody. And it'd be really nice, I think, to see more opportunities for more people here to get involved. And I think just finally to add to that, one of the things that we've looked to do in several calls that I've been involved in is to try and bring in new people who haven't had that opportunity before. And so, you know, I definitely encourage people to talk to people here, to work with people who are already doing the process of applying for money in this space. And, you know, people, I think, are very, very open to kind of engaging with new partners and getting people involved. So definitely a great opportunity for the whole community, I think.
Definitely, I'd echo that. Martin, any recent experiences you want to highlight?
From a few years ago, rather than just one, main one is to understand, because it's relevant yesterday with the government coming out, was an experience about a few years ago when I was with the STFC and I was on one of their exhibition stands in HPC. That's fine, it's the exact same stand and exhibition I'd had with the university. Except it was at the same time, this was 3 years ago, when the budget was on. And they switched the screens over to listen to the budget. And it's only then, and as an academic you don't realise this, we work in our best practice of the groups together, the researchers. We work, what's the best skills set we've got here? What's the best skill set we've got with the technicians? What's the best skill set we've got in this digital research domain? What can we do, what we think is really important, what's missing? And we look at our bubble. When you have the UKRI policies, their bubble also includes the government above them. And suddenly they're putting in these mega projects. We have some of them are our favourite mega projects. It's an actual term that exists. And these things appear in the budgets. And they want to know what that final civil servant has actually put into the line and whether it actually is there or not. And if it's there, they've got a chance of spending it in a year's time. And for them, they can start planning at that point. It's you're most likely going into overdrive. You find out what may be coming out. It's not budget, can't be budget when the budget does come through. And so that suddenly realised, said, oh, this is really important. And I've even gotten down to passively, now I've gone down to academia, to download the Chancellor's statement if I'm bored and over a cup of coffee, search the science section and see what is happening in the north, what is potential here. And then that gives you a better eco-structure, maybe a bigger bubble to have the whole thing. But I think we missed this thing, and I've got to say, I've spent my life, 20 years or so, blinkered and looking at a bubble, and even blinkered in here, we're looking at our DRI. So the thing is to think a bit, be outside the box, but then realise why other people are doing the decisions they do. And it's not because they're basically stupid. It's because it looks as if they are, no offense, because they're doing this thing, a dramatic move, it keeps changing. But it's because somebody else has made a decision of whatever it is in structure, and then try and understand it and then talk to people. So I think it's right. And then the other one is just basically talking and meeting people. I think we're doing that here, a bit there.
Yeah, and it's great we have some representatives of the funders here. So obviously you haven't had the experience of applying for funding, but obviously you've had experience of being involved in funding calls. So are there any experiences that you've had over the last year you think are particularly noteworthy that we would all benefit from hearing about?
I don't mind starting. So from the funder side, especially when it's infrastructure, so in the digital space, if we're looking at, so you have got the people and skills in the middle, and then you've got software, hardware, data, sustainability, responsible research innovation. So all that, I think, so funders are always having our door open. You can come to talk to us anytime. But what I would say, when you tend to find yourself successful, is you have done enough homework to understand what is the need in the community, and then find your strength and what is the core message you want to deliver. So before you come to us, you're already having that really clear high-level picture of exactly what's going to make an impact for the funder, for the society, for the government. And that's when we find it much easier, because we as a funder don't have the specific expertise in your field. That's quite key, as I was talking to Afia, about how you convey that message to a layman fashion audience. That is a very key skill that we want you to have, because if you can't get that message through to the funders, then we can't actually take that policy and consolidate it for you as the community. Don't know, Santiago.
I completely agree. I think I was having a conversation in a meeting that maybe some of you went to last year in Leicester around the requirements of exascale and evidence base for building an exascale computer. And we were in a roundtable trying to make the case for exascale. And one of the persons mentioned, oh, but we don't really need to convince decision makers that we need science. And I sat there, I was like, don't we have we all decided that that's the case? Or do we actually need to convince them that maybe they understand that we need science, that we need research, but we need to put it in terms that they can actually work in? Because sometimes it's not whether or not I fund science, it's whether I put this pound in research or whether I put this pound in housing, in healthcare, and all these things. So it's important when we're doing all these things, when we're doing calls, to really understand what the call is for, what the focus is for, and try to work on that. And sometimes the other thing I have to mention is we are people as well, and in the panels, most of the time it's your people. So sometimes we want to put people in the panels who are purely good sellers, but what you need is your good RSCs, your people who really understand the issue, because that's normally who's in the panels. That's normally, you kind of have to have a mixture of both. You need both the big picture and the small picture and the very, very technical picture. So I think it is quite interesting, and it's very challenging and very scary sometimes, saying, yeah, I'm going to have to sell all these things. But I think at the end of the day, there is understanding, and there is an effort from UKRI to advocate for you and to really make the case for you to the other elements of the government that this is the thing we need. You just need to give us the elements to prove that.
Thank you. I think it's interesting you mentioned about the review panels. For early career research, you might not be aware, there is a thing called the EPSRC College. Is it UKRI College now? So this is an opportunity where you can actually join the panel of reviewers, and you can nominate yourself, you can put yourself forward, you don't have to wait for someone else to put yourself forward. And they're always looking for new people to join this college of reviewers. And the people who are on the college of reviewers, you might get to review a few grant proposals who are in your area of expertise, and you might also get selected to be on a panel. And this is a really excellent experience for you, if you're going to get involved in funding in the future, and also to be aware of what's out there and to give your expertise to these panels and help shape these things. And engaging with EPSRC, or other research councils are available, in this kind of way is a really excellent way. And it doesn't matter how junior you are, you can get into these colleges, and that really does help.
And one thing that I think is important to mention, apart from the panels, one thing that's very useful is taking part in advisory boards and different teams like that. We are very keen to inform all our decisions with input from the community, and at the same time we're very keen that those decisions, those stakeholders, those advisors come from a broad range of experiences. So every time we do a call, we make a special effort to ensure that we take people from many stages in their career path. So if you see a call for an advisory, we just recently, at DRI program, we had a call for the advisory board on digital research infrastructure. It just closed. But if you see calls like that, please don't hesitate. And if you think that maybe you don't have as experienced as other people who would potentially apply, we still want to hear from you. And even if you are not accepted, we still really appreciate talking to you and understanding your experience, and might in the future have a conversation about how we can take your input for those kind of things.
Matt, I just wanted to add on to the EPSRC peer review college you mentioned. So in terms of the highlighting opportunity for ECRs, there's a few positive actions we have been doing. So things like protected characteristics. So we do specify in each panel, say for example, in terms of gender, what's the proportion of female panel members we're looking at. And recently we have done in terms of career stage as well. So we do actually proactively look for ECRs to sit on our panel and do feel empowered to apply and nominate yourself for panels and peer review processes if you're interested in.
Thank you. Yes, that's really good to hear. Thank you. So Martin mentioned that UKRI funding staff are humans, and so that naturally leads us on to the question of relationship. So it'd be interesting to hear the views from the academics. How do you view your relationship with UKRI funding staff, and from the UKRI people, how do you view your relationship with the community? How does that work? What do you do to make that work? How does that help? Jeremy, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think it's been really nice to see over the last few years, and I guess particularly through this programme, that there's been a lot of connection with the community from UKRI, and that, I think, I mean, my particular experience has been both with the EPSRC, DRI team, and then with the wider kind of UKRI top-level DRI group. And, you know, I think it's really nice to see both that there have been, certainly in the past, I can remember a couple of events where people were sort of invited from the community to engage with the team, and I think that's a great way to understand both how things work at the UKRI level and what the opportunities are, but also for that exchange of kind of, you know, ideas to happen, to understand what it is that funders are looking for, but also to help inform the funders, you know, what we want as a community, what's useful for us. So I think there's been a really, really good development in that perspective. I think if I look back sort of 10 to 15 years when I was sort of involved in bids but not leading them as a sort of PhD student or as a kind of early career researcher, you know, it was much more focused on things like responsive mode, which were much more open in terms of the scope. And in those cases, I think that kind of engagement doesn't work in quite the same way. So, you know, for me, this kind of the process we have at the moment with the kind of structure that we have has been really beneficial, because there's a lot of things I think we know need to change in the community. There's a lot of things, if we're going to support the growth in computational research and all of the changes that are happening in the space around digital research in general, you know, we need the support of the funders, but we need the support of our institutions, and it's all kind of, I think, intertwined together. And so having that kind of conversation with the funding bodies and having that kind of two-way exchange of ideas, as well as, of course, the calls that come out, which are obviously competitive, but there is, you know, that opportunity to put in ideas and to have that feedback. So, yeah, from that perspective, I think, you know, really, you know, the relationship is very good. I think there's a very strong structure in place, and I'm really keen that continues, and I hope that will be the case.
Thank you. Martin, anything to add to that?
Well, I've got to say, in my early career, I thought there's very much an us and them attitude, and I think people do still have that, and sort of very antagonistic. Put it in, and they come back and say no. And it took a long time to realise it was actually not them saying no. it was the peer reviews, and so actually the peer review gets become. The college becomes really important to understand that we're saying no to our own grants, really, and justifiably so at times. So it's getting peer reviewed is important. So, and then when I've started going through the different councils and different structures, and then realising that they are, I say, people, some sense, yes, they can't actually say no at ever. You can't say yes or no to a grant, but you can basically sometimes advise and guide, and you can also then state, even do sub-calls and structures which then fit in with what your team may want to do, or so in the teams. And that is basically the advantage. And I think the whole DRI has actually come out of that in some sense of structure, and we've got an opportunity to keep it going out of that. There's only disadvantage I've got to say is one of the advantages. There's one comment which came last time. Yes, people here can be co-Is, especially be co-Is in all these grants. It's become very important, and that's a new move which has happened very much. So you don't need to be a professor in so and so to be a co-I, or actually to lead. now. But the university structure and the bubbles we exist in at this sort of level, at lower level, aren't actually in favour of, and they've got to change a bit to actually get more recognition of basically being in professional services and actually leading a project and getting the status from it. That will happen. I think that's just slowly moving coming forwards. But I think we need to push that. So it needs to be more of what I classify as a level playing field about getting more applications in.
Yeah, I think it also varies a bit about which institution you're on and what kind of contract you're on. So it's not a level playing field. Not everybody with a DRI contract is treated equally in the eyes of their university, whether you're technical or professional or academic related. Some universities you have to be a certain minimum pay grade to get onto grants. So push at your university and find out what the situation is. And if it's not in your favour, then push all the more. So, funders, what's your view of relationship with the community? How do you approach academics as humans?
So I was going to say, by hearing my peers talk, I did have a few points to echo. So Jeremy mentioned about how the community is connected, and from what I have seen in my role, often if you are engaged in one thing, it leads to another. So that network is quite well connected. So for example, recently, I say recently, probably about 3 years ago, we funded the Warwick Analytical Science, which was a pot of money for our RTP RSEs, and then that contributed to the ITSS, TSM. So it's just from a small pot of grant money, then that evolved to quite a big community. So it's not isolated or siloed for both RTP and RSEs, is what I want to say. That one initiative quite usually lead to another. And I was going to say, in terms of funding decision for the funder, you're absolutely right. We can't make a funding decision. So that's up to our community experts to say, we recommend this should be funded. But what we do have in terms of autonomy-wise is that the budget holder for each scheme or core, they look at the recommendations provided by the panel or peer review and then decide how they prioritize their budget. But what I was going to say in terms of the relationship working with the community is my biggest sort of reflection in the last few years is we actually learn from you. So we do have our policy and regulations in place, but most of those fundamentals we actually learn from the community. So we're really open to know what's in the community's mind, and it keeps evolving. So it's never static, and that's why we're quite keen to go out and about to learn from you. We don't say we know everything because we don't. So we are really keen to keep that close relationship with the community individuals.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think we have done great work in connecting with the community, but we still have so much more work to do. I was talking to a music PhD in another context, but I told her I worked for UKRI, and she literally gave me the stereotype of a person, a bureaucrat, going, yes, no, I'll fund you, no, I won't fund you. And that for her, that was what UKRI was. Just a group of people who decide yes, and in her idea, I kept asking her, in her idea they were all career civil servants that do this, and the idea that a lot of the people who work at UKRI have PhDs are very enmeshed in the scientific community in general from the start. I think, and also, for example, I work in the digital research infrastructure program, and I was talking to one of the community, and they said, yeah, in my view, this program is 25 people because you're working on so many things. The DRI program, at least as it sits in the central UKRI, or 4 people, looking at data, software, compute, skills. We work with our partners in all the councils, Ali, Afia, all these people, but at the end it's a small team looking at all these things. So I think we still have a big job in communicating how we work, what we are, and at the end of the day, that our decisions, we are really interested in including the community in the way that we do things. So a lot of the things that happen in our terms of reference and in our calls are actually product of having had a chat with you, having had an engagement process of this is what we need to do. A lot of the times actually is RSC coming up to UKRI saying, actually I need you to put this in the call, because if you don't put this in the call, the university won't hear me, or won't understand that this is a priority. So a lot of this is actually from engagement that we work, and we've worked in things like the open contracts for RSCs and things like that, that we're very aware that it's an issue, and we're trying to find different ways so that work. But the only way that works is because we had the conversation first. So that relationship, I think, is the most important thing. And most of my work, for example, is in engagement, in talking, and in doing these activities, and less in the funding part, at least as a percentage of the time I spend. Just to give an idea that we have a very, very varied group of people in UKRI. We have international team, policy teams. We have skills and people teams. We have open research teams. And everyone in general tries to inform their decisions with, or should inform their decisions with input from the community.
Thank you. You mentioned that the size of the team that you work in. I was just curious, with such a small team, one of the frustrations as an academic dealing with EPSRC or UKRI is the team keeps changing. How much is a relationship with a person or with a team or with an organisation? What are your thoughts on that?
Do you want to cover that?
Yeah, so I'll start with EPSRC. You're right, it is a really high turnover staff rate. So for example, recently from December to January, we had 2 joint heads of the team, both actually left their role now. Also at sort of like portfolio manager, senior portfolio manager level, the turnover rate is high. But what we do in EPSRC is we have that shared baseline skills and knowledge. So for example, Afia is on software in our team. For me, it's more capital. So that covers all sorts of facilities across the country. But we both have a bit of understanding of each other's portfolio. So what I would say is, if your familiar contact in EPSRC UKRI is gone, feel free to contact any member of the team. And then if they don't have the portfolio level expertise, they will point you to the right direction.
Yeah, I think we do have the issue with turnover. It is a reality in universities as well, especially when you work with a lot of PhDs. But we do try to make it so that there is continuity within relationships. So when I came into the team, I was very quickly introduced with the community very clearly. My managers clearly prioritized going to these events so that we could give them a new phase for DRI, and that this relationship does not break. But it is an issue, but I think it's an issue that you find in most groups. But I think, as Lee mentioned, if your contact left, the other person is going to be more than happy to rekindle or to retake that relationship.
Martin, Jeremy, do you want to add into that? Or?
Just a quick one, I think. Continuity is one of the most annoying things, or lack of continuity. And I've got to say, it's one of the few things which I did it all wrong when I first came to Manchester, and we set up systems which were recurring contracts continually with the software developers and the platform infrastructure teams. And after a certain period of time, we've actually, DRI, across our bubbles at the academic side, have improved things. I think the system's got better. Still can improve in the sense of much more permanent contracts, much more stability, much more. We know this is an area which should go for 10, 20 years. People can have a full career in it. And that's the one thing we're looking forward to. And the DRI is fairly new. And we're looking forward to that kind of structure going on for a 10, 20-year project. Because, again, we know people are saying you can't build an exascale computer and then decommission it in 3 years' time. It doesn't work. Well, would if you did. So I think long-term continuity and long-term project management, and that may encourage, will push forward to your bosses to basically give you better benefits, better structures, bigger teams, and having more longer term is much better than having contracts which sort of change.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been talking about the community on a number of occasions, like it is a well-defined single thing. I'd be interested to hear the views of the academics. How much do you think, when you're putting in a grant proposal, are you representing your community or your institution or your research group? How parochial, how national is your viewpoint of these things? And then we'll flip the question around for the funders in a second.
So I guess from my perspective, I guess it differs for everybody depending on what you're working on, but from my perspective, my work is very much outward facing. So it's actually not focused so much internally in the university, but focused more on the community. And so from that perspective, it's something which I think, we're all, as much as we're often all competing for, money that's in the same pot, the benefits that come out of the work from whoever does that work should benefit the community as a whole. So I think there are obviously challenges because there is that competitive nature of us all trying to do different things in the same space. But I do feel that all of the work that is being done should benefit the community, and actively, we should actively try and engage with the community as part of that work. And I definitely see that happening in the projects that I'm involved in, and that other people that I know working in this space are involved in. So I think it's, as a community as a whole, I think we do very well at that, but we also have to work with our institutions and the other challenges that we are coming up against in terms of how we actually achieve the things that we want to achieve. So it's something which definitely, it's not entirely straightforward to address all of these kind of competing constraints. But I think that whether you are or you're not involved in a project, certainly engaging with people who are doing work in the space is always beneficial, because it's ultimately much of the work I think in the DRI space is focused on making a change to the established system. It's making opportunities for people to be able to have stronger, better structured careers. It's making opportunities for people to be able to gain more skills in the space, and that's something that is targeted at everybody. So yeah, from that perspective, I think.
So do you think you're more successful in a grant proposal if you bring in multiple institutions and multiple groups, or can you do it all on your own?
So just in the context of a grant proposal, my personal feeling is that you can't do it all on your own in this space, and certainly with the stuff that I work on. I guess it's different for everybody, but for the stuff that I'm doing, absolutely, it has to be collaborative. It has to have the right breadth of partners involved in the project, and it has to have the right kind of external communities engaged as well, because what we're trying to do is something that is very wide-ranging and far-reaching, and that's not going to happen if we don't get that wider buy-in.
So funders, when you're talking to the community, how coherent are we as a community? Who is the community? How do you know you've got everybody in your conversations?
I think I'll take this one, especially because the DRI program from the beginning is supposed to be across discipline groups. But before that, I want to mention the comment on projects that are done across communities, across institutions. And we've recently been seeing a lot of applications that are very interestingly organized across institutions and as private-public partnerships that are very, very interesting. And there's a lot of encouragement from the community of finding new ways to work together. And not only that they work together, but the way that they work together is very, very interesting, especially for these new huge mega infrastructures, if you want to call them that. But I think we will always have an issue where if we feel too comfortable that our communication pathways are robust, and I feel that I'm able to talk to that community, what will happen is that I'm basically gonna have just one vision or one idea, and I'm probably gonna end up ignoring a lot of people who are not aware of the traditional ways of contacting. So an effort is always made when we do a project, when we do a call. There is always a meeting of who might we be missing, who might we not be contacting. So whenever you see a call, please share it with everyone, you know, the people who do, who you think might not have been thought of this. We're very, very keen of hearing novel approaches, novel ideas. And obviously it's not your job to do our job of finding those people, but please do come over and say, I think you're missing this community, I think this is the community. But we are very aware that we just feel comfortable that we're doing a good job in our engagement, then we might fall short. So there is always an effort of sitting down and saying who might we be missing in this call, in this activity, in this solution, in this infrastructure.
Thank you. So we have got the Slido for questions. It's been on the board. There's been a few questions posted on. This is both for the people in the room and online. And I think that the top question actually follows on very nicely from what Santiago's been saying. It says, I don't remember what he said, but old boys networks were mentioned. How does that fit in with your relationship building? So again, it's about networks and reaching people. I think you've touched on this a bit, but maybe you want to, I think Lee, you were going to expand on what Santiago was saying.
Yeah, I was just going to add in what Santiago said. I think with the nature of infrastructure, that I would like the community to actually jump out of their comfort zone. Having that project mindset is not good enough. You do really have to think in the wider picture in a sense of the societal, economical, and how you fit in with the government agenda. Because once you jump out and then you can identify your key partners, so our advice is always not to spread yourself too thinly and having, say, 20 or 30, contribution letters of support to be submitted. It's rather that you identify the strength and then work and focus with that few key partners. But what I was also going to say is my team recently has done a data analysis in terms of the assessment process. So this is just one example on infrastructure. We have got outline stage, peer review, and interview panel. But what we found out that's strokers is, so the sifting really only happened at the outline stage, which was EPSRC internal, and then the interview panel. When it's peer review, you find the community itself is very supportive. So the success rate at peer review stage is 99.9 over the 5-year financial period window. So what that means is when you are bidding for an infrastructure, the peer review community is either the users who want to use those, or either they think that will be really useful to see in the landscape. So what I want to say from this data is that the community is one. So obviously there is the competitiveness element in it, but think about the bigger picture and how you can work with the community to benefit the society. It's probably quite key to success.
Thank you. Food for thought there.
Just a quick question on the old boys comment. I think one of the reasons I mentioned what I did is because I was thinking of the question at the earlier panel on the old boys thing, and it is something that we tried. And it's very important to think that just because you think you've reached a barrier such as gender, there are many other barriers and many other communities that you might not be reaching. The international community, sometimes, especially with digital research infrastructure, humanities are quite ignored for a lot of the work, especially when you think of the incredible things they're doing with the limited resources they have. And you should never feel too comfortable that your systems are working.
Thank you. Martin, Jeremy, anything to add on old voice networks and community building or not?
I was just going to maybe add very briefly a point. So I think the DRI space is very interesting for me because I feel that as a group we're probably people who have been under-recognised within sort of institutional contexts over a long time, and part of the work we're trying to do is to actually change that. So I think those, in some cases, those kind of traditional networks that perhaps were being alluded to in the sort of academic space in the previous panel don't exist so much here. But I also see, certainly within the RSE community, a huge amount of work being done to make that community more diverse, because actually it is ultimately still drawn from areas of the research space broadly that have not been particularly diverse in the past. So I think there's huge amounts of work being done to break down the kind of concept of that, but also that we see groups like Women in HPC, and some people may have seen the work that's being done by ALSAs and Women in HPC at the moment around the Move the Needle project to try and kind of raise awareness of all these different sort of opportunities and changes in the space. So there are challenges here, and I think that this is always something that we can do more, but there is a lot happening, and I think that I know that the question that's on the screen I'm looking over here says not just about gender, and I recognise there's a lot more in this space around kind of improving diversity and so on, but I won't look there for the question next time. Okay. Anyway, but, so yeah, so that's I think the kind of point I wanted to make.
I'll augment. One thing I want to augment is the topic is about the UK landscape, and I think it's one thing which we want to correlate a bit. One thing I've always used the word is leveraging, and in some sense the infrastructure and software developed here has leveraged lots of different groups, and serendipity has come in and other groups which you haven't thought about, and that has destroyed a lot of the old boys network in certain areas. Yes. We still have this things that certain groups would come in and say whether they're certain old school research topics which really wanted to continue on the process. And I think they've been useful of basically continuing guaranteeing success. But there's been other areas which basically said, we can use that same code to do this, the same structure to do this. It's very transferable. And that has cut across those barriers. What we've got to be better at is actually exploiting that, because the UK can't. I think we are quite small. We can't compete with US, China, Russia in terms of let's make a bigger supercomputer, let's make a bigger quantum computer, let's make a bigger... we're not going to do that. We can't pour the resources into it, some of them can do it. But we can leverage together a lot of the things we've already got and structures we've got and make it. Because actually the advantage of being a small country and a small network is it's easier to have some of these networks together. You're not travelling 6,000 miles to travel to one side of the country to the other. So one thing we can do is that, repeat that leveraging word and focusing on what the UK is good at and getting those cross networks working. And then we'll see what happens.
Indeed, I think events like this are really good at getting that networking going. So I was looking at the attendance list and the variety of institutions we got represented here. It's not just the big old traditional Russell Group universities. It's a much wider and more diverse set of institutions represented. And I think that's really encouraging for this community going forwards. Okay, so I think we've got time for probably one last question. So I think there was questions on there in the middle. Is my team aren't academics, but our deliverables are often DRI. Should we be applying for grants? How do we go about it? So thoughts on that one? So
yes. If the call fits what you're doing, yes. So some calls are research specific, but some calls are for infrastructures. And some of the things that EPSRC does really relate to the work for RSEs as well, or within UKRI as a whole, not only for EPSRC. So yes, check out the funding page. Look at what the deliverables are. Look at what the grant is. As I said, not all of them are research outputs. Some are uplift calls. Some are software calls. Some are less about a specific infrastructure and more about creating networks and things like that. So yes, please check what we do. Not all we do is grants as well. We do events like this. And if you keep watching the space, I think there's a lot of resources from networking to these kinds of opportunities.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to add, in terms of the general direction of travel, we have been working across UKRI on the culture sort of like shifting. So you can probably spot that in general, when UKRI has a call, we don't specifically say only for academics. What that means is, in theory, that any RTP, RSE can apply for a call. That's not specifically for academics. So that should be said in the core document. But what I had in my mind is for RTP, RSEs, that where is your strength and where you are likely to be successful. So say, for example, if you're applying for standard mode as a PI or co-I, or you're applying for program grant as a PI or co-I, you have not got that level of expertise and skills to compete to the traditional academics. Whereas when you're looking at either a capital or digital infrastructure grant, that's where really your strength is contributing significantly to the grant itself. So either if you are a PI or co-I, we have really successful examples across EPSRC in terms of RTPs, RSEs being PIs, like Jeremy, yourself. So that's what I want to say. In general, eligibility-wise, you can apply for anything that doesn't specify it's for academics, but really you want to think about what's my contribution? Where can I pivot the focus to myself as a PI or co-I? And that lead to a successful story. Thank you.
Jeremy?
I think maybe just to add briefly to that, a couple of points. So the end of the question asks, how do we go about it? And I think the first point would be that, as has been mentioned, it's great now to see that calls do say this is eligible for technical professionals, whatever, to lead the calls and to be co-Is. Often I think institutions have kind of legacy processes in place where they don't necessarily recognise this because they just haven't been exposed to calls like that before. So often, if you have problems, anecdotally, many of us will have heard of people having experiences where institutions are not comfortable or unwilling to allow somebody who isn't in a traditional academic role to actually lead something or to be a co-lead. But often that's just because there is no precedent for that, they haven't seen it before. And I think having that written in the calls is really important. And often you can have a discussion with people in your institution and show them that this call is different and that this is something which explicitly states that that's possible. And actually in those cases, it's often then the problem can be resolved quite easily. So I think engaging with people within the institution and with the funder and whatever is great. And the other point about how to go about it is talk to people here. If you're here and you're asking that question, I guess that somebody in the room, do speak to people and make connections with people, because actually a lot of these things happen as a result of collaborations. They don't happen just as one group of people going for something alone. And, being able to partner with people and work with people who have done this stuff before is a great way to get involved.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I'll just correlate it's getting your institution to be cooperative. We mentioned before yesterday about lone wolves. Lone individuals in an institution. Even if you have a group and you've never done this before, the institution may not be happy with it or may not understand it. And I think it's getting this concept of that there shouldn't be these concepts of being alone there. You aren't. I think that's what this network is about. And yes, there may be some institution which will take a longer time to get over it. Even our one still has struggles with trying to get money in that way and trying to work it out. But at least They should be saying, they'll say, it's done here, here, and here, this is how it works, and this is the collaboration we should do. So we should be here to be able to convert those things and get more people into not just being loners and then trying to struggle, but actually collaborating and working through it. And then that's the other thing. I think all of these ones are working on collaborations. I think so. That's good to the Research Council. Perhaps they should do the opposite and say we don't want any academics at all involved in it.
We're over time. One short final comment.
Yeah, just a slight sort of, negative in terms of expectation management. So the academic sort of community is very aware of the success rate of grant applications. So when they are turned down, they sort of like ask for feedback, how they can improve. Whereas what we tend to see in the RSE, RTP community is if they're not successful, then they don't actually proactively approach us to say, what was the issue? So it's just the success rate for any application is going to be low because the competitiveness of the budget. But I would like to encourage our RTP, RSE community to actually ask for feedback if you're not being successful, because that can then lead to the next way forward.
Thank you. That's a very helpful comment to end on. So we are over time. It was a very interesting discussion. So thank our panel.